Game of Thrones fans, you remember your reaction to the Red Wedding, right? The dropped jaw, utter shock as you were left staring at the screen, unable to believe what you had just seen. Fans of Breaking Bad might recall the devastating end of Ozymandias, where the entire audience was blown away by just how dark a mainstream story could get. As evidence, there are times when an intensely dark turn can be of great benefit to a popular show, and a sudden shift in tone can leave viewers amazed by how daring the creators were during production. However, just as often a show can blindside you with an out-of-nowhere death or a pointlessly cruel moment, leaving the preceding show ruined and viewers with a sour taste in their mouth. In cases like this, it sometimes falls to the much maligned networks to rein in a creator's darker urges and temper their bleaker instincts. So let's take a look at some, shall we? I am the Black Cloud of Ash from What Culture, and these are 10 TV moments that were almost way darker. 10. Dexter's death. Dexter. Dexter wasn't a show wanting for dark content, given that its smooth-talking charmer of a protagonist was, a serial killer who targeted other, more depraved serial killers. That is pretty much as dark a pitch as any television writer could conceive. But the show nonetheless managed to close on a bizarrely cheery note, with the titular protagonist evading responsibility for his actions and no one in his life ever being the wiser. If it feels jarring compared to the rest of the show's tone, that's because it is. Original showrunner Clyde Phillips, who brought the show to life, had envisioned Dexter not only caught, but sentenced to death for his years of gruesome crimes. He had hoped to end the show with a ghostly group of Dexter's victims watching him die by lethal injection, a somber note which would have made far more sense given the dark tone of the show itself. However, Phillips exited the show after its 4th season, leaving the series to end on this unexpectedly upbeat note and leave fans furious. 9. A douchier and deadlier Steve. Stranger Things. Stranger Things has switched up a lot of plot plans throughout its run, most famously saving its central star Elle from definitive death at the close of its 1st season, and thus guaranteeing a few more seasons from the show's premise in the process. But one of the darkest fates for an initially minor character was rewritten because of the actor's popularity on set, and his on-screen charm ensured the survival of what was originally meant to be a thankless red shirt role. Jock/bad boyfriend/eventual good babysitter Steve was intended to pressure teenage protagonist Nancy into sex, only to then fall victim to the show's main monster, the Demogorgon, in classic 80s slasher style. However, actor Joe Keery proved so popular with the showrunners that the part was rewritten in order for Steve to subvert horror boyfriend conventions and turn into a likable, more mature presence, with the character eventually becoming a stellar comic relief by the show's next season. If only poor Barb had been so lucky. 8. Dewey and the Elderly Sitter. Malcolm in the Middle. As far as post-Simpsons network sitcoms went, Malcolm in the Middle was about the best at fusing the mean-spirited cynicism of It's Always Sunny with the warm-hearted family dynamics of earlier, more innocent sitcom eras. The adventures of sad sack Hal, tyrant Lois, adorable tyke Dewey, black sheep Francis, budding psychopath Reese, and the titular boy genius and arrogant know-it-all Malcolm made for a hysterically funny, uncompromisingly dark, and often still warm-hearted depiction of everyday Americana in the 90s. That said, there were still occasions when the writer's room felt it prudent to rein themselves in lest the meaner side of their humour take over the show. Take the episode in which the family, sans a sick Dewey, vacation at a water park together. Originally, Dewey's babysitter was going to steal the youngest of Malcolm's dysfunctional brood, dyeing his hair black before bolting for the border. Yes, really. The writers decided this was far too disturbing, but of course, this being Malcolm in the Middle, their alternate gag wasn't a lot softer. In the episode proper, the sitter has a heart attack and promptly dies whilst dancing with Dewey. Much better. 7. Gideon's gruesome fate. Hannibal. Hannibal was easily one of TV's most violent shows during its original run, giving the head-crushing of Game of Thrones and baseball bat-bashing of The Walking Dead a run for their money. Unlike those 2 examples though, like its eponymous antagonist, Hannibal revelled in setting up complex, multifaceted orchestras of extreme bodily harm, never settling for something as brutally simple as smashing a skull to bits. Just look at the fate of Gideon, a troubled serial killer played by alt comedy icon Eddie Izzard of all people, who evades Hannibal and Will Graham for almost 2 seasons. Gideon's eventual fate is fairly gruesome. No one wants to have their limbs removed, after all. But the character's original demise took things to another, far gorier level, with a still conscious Gideon's internal organs tied to a string, which was itself tied to a ceiling fan so that once an unsuspecting individual hit the switch, well, you wouldn't need to be Rube Goldberg to work out where this is heading. Luckily, creator Brian Fuller decided against filming the scene on the advice of his network NBC, so we were spared this particularly dark, if a little bit slapstick, end for Gideon. 6. Hathaway's pilot episode Overdose, ER. Before Scrubs and Grey's Anatomy graced our screens, ER set the gold standard for all hospital dramas to follow. Launching the career of star George Clooney into the stratosphere, the show fused tense medical drama with an endless string of love triangles to great effect, winning over both audiences and critics for its first few seasons. Anyway. However, like the show which followed in its wake, ER was never afraid to portray the gritty reality of hospital life. In-depth surgeries, all manner of shootings and beatings, and even deaths from malpractice were all part of life in the busy, bloody emergency room. And the show's pilot was supposed to set up this grim atmosphere a little too intensely. The pilot originally included the death of fan favourite nurse Carol Hathaway, instead of seeing her saved from a suicidal overdose in the opening episode. Luckily, the creators recognised that audiences loved the character and opted to spare her, which was just as well given how important Hathaway was to the series at large. 5. The brutal original ending, Harper's Island. Harper's Island was a strange and hard to classify beast when it arrived on our screens in 2009. A limited-run murder mystery set entirely on Harper's Island, where a blue-blooded family congregated for the lavish wedding of one of their junior members. The show was essentially a slasher series before the likes of MTV's Scream, Scream Queens, Man Slasher popularised the format a few years later. Sure, there was a central mystery technically, but there were scarcely sufficient clues for the eager viewers to guess at the murderer's identity, meaning the elaborately crafted death scenes and tense chases made up the meat of the show. But where the show really struggled was its decision to cast former Ugly Betty love interest Christopher Gorman as the surprise killer. The quirky character actor looked more at home with a ukulele than a machete, and the twist stretched the little credulity remaining by the show's denouement. However, things were almost even worse and a lot darker. Originally, Gorman's Henry Dunn was supposed to get away with a spate of murders totally undetected and end up winning the heart of the final girl to boot. 4. The cigarette-smoking man almost killed the lone gunman, The X-Files. The cigarette-smoking man was one of the X-Files' many unsolved mysteries for years of the show's original run, before an episode spotlighting the enigmatic figure, musings of a cigarette-smoking man, finally gave us a little insight into his origin and purpose. The character remained shrouded in mystery even after his time in centre stage, but his story almost took a far darker turn, and off some other fan favourites in the process. The lone gunmen, comic relief of the show's early seasons and eventual stars of a much maligned spin-off, were going to be killed by the cigarette-smoking man where they came too close to revealing his true identity. Instead, the creators opted for a much more ambiguous ending, leaving the veracity of the lone gunman's theories unconfirmed. Of course, this being the X-Files, the creators couldn't resist including a nod to this in the episode proper, with a scene where the mystery man complains that a magazine which published a story of his completely changed the ending. 3. Carol was almost killed off 7 seasons ago, The Walking Dead. Look, we all love The Walking Dead's T-Dog, and it broke our collective hearts when the memeable fan favourite character was offed midway through season 3, a killing which stood out as brutal even on a show as relentless as The Walking Dead. But, believe it or not, the episode Killer Within was almost far darker. Whilst T-Dog was originally intended to live and meme another day, the seemingly immortal Carol was going to be killed off in the first draft of The Killer Within, a move which would have left fans unsure whether anyone was safe. After all, even 10 seasons in, it still seems as if Carol alone is unkillable against the show's cast. Carol's character has diverged from the show's source material, Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead comic series, more than most. By now, it is hard to imagine the show without her as a vital central figure. So it's just as well the creators decided against offing her as early as the show's 3rd season. Sorry though, T-Dog. 2. Rosebud and JFK, The Simpsons. The Simpsons isn't averse to a dark joke here and there. In its decades-long time on air, the show has had both fantastic and god-awful forays into the world of dark comedy. Some of the classic show's best moments have flirted with bleak humour, but the titular Springfieldian family, by and large, avoid the sort of uber-dark territory mined by the likes of Family Guy and South Park. However, one much-loved instalment of the show's 5th season, often argued to be one of its best, almost featured a far darker joke than the Simpsons writing staff could get behind, and the gag was jettisoned before the episode episode's production began. Rosebud, a Citizen Kane spoof named after Monty Burns' favourite childhood teddy, originally included a brief history of the toy's life without Burns, including his involvement in the assassination of JFK. Yes, really. There's no knowing whether the joke could have worked since it never made it to the final cut, but it is probably for the best that this one was cut. 1. Bob's Burgers were made of human meat. Bob's Burgers. Of the many imitators which came into existence after the mega success of The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers is alone in attempting, mostly successfully, to ape the classic show's family-friendly format. However, this wasn't always intended to be the case. When the show was first pitched to Fox, the premise was built around Bob's titular franchise serving up his treats with an, interesting secret ingredient. The Belchers, the quirky brood which the show revolves around, were originally meant to serve human flesh, Soylent Green style, to the denizens of their local town. The absurdly dark premise was cut early on in the show's development, but the pilot did hold on to elements of this abandoned idea. In this iteration, long-suffering patriarch Bob is accused of cannibalism, but luckily the creators changed their original tact, and so in the actual episode, the accusation isn't actually true. Well, there you have it. And that's our list. Which of these dark TV moments should have made it to screen? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash, and this has been What Culture. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and come back again soon for some more dark TV content. Thanks for watching.